Snow fell, heavy flakes blanketing the world in white. Inside, a fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the log cabin walls. Michael sat alone, nursing a mug of hot cocoa. Christmas Eve. A time for family, for warmth. But Michael was alone. He missed them, of course, his family, their laughter, their warmth. But the city held too many painful memories this time of year. The mountains, with their stark beauty and silence, offered a different kind of solace, a refuge. He glanced at the window. The wind howled outside, a mournful sound. Beyond the frosted glass, the night was a black abyss, the falling snow swallowed by the darkness. A shiver ran down his spine. He was alone, utterly alone. For a moment he regretted his decision to come here, to this isolated cabin, miles from the nearest town. The silence, once comforting, now pressed in on him, suffocating. He was trapped, a prisoner of the snow and the encroaching darkness. A log shifted in the fireplace, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. The sudden sound startled him, his heart pounding. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing pulse. Just the wind, he told himself. Just the wind and the snow. He went to the window, peering out into the night. The wind had picked up, whipping the snow into a frenzy. He couldn't see more than a few feet beyond the cabin walls, and then he saw it, a face, staring at him through the swirling snow. A man, his face barely visible in the darkness, but his eyes, those he could see clearly, wide, unblinking, reflecting the firelight from within. And he was smiling, a slow, chilling smile that sent a jolt of fear through Michael's entire body. He stumbled back from the window, his heart pounding in his chest. He told himself it was a trick of the light, a figment of his imagination, but deep down he knew better. Someone was out there, watching him. The sound, when it came, was soft at first, a gentle tapping like fingers drumming on glass. He froze, every muscle in his body tense. The tapping came again, more insistent this time. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then a loud crack, like wood splintering. He jumped, his eyes darting to the door. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. He was trapped. He grabbed the rifle he kept above the fireplace, his hands shaking. He'd never fired it in anger, but it gave him a semblance of security in this desolate place. He moved through the cabin, his breath catching in his throat, each creak of the floorboards sounding deafening in the silence. He crouched by the window, peering out into the darkness. He couldn't see anyone, but the footsteps continued. Circling, waiting, he was prey, trapped in his own little haven. The first rays of dawn painted the snow-covered landscape in pale hues of pink and gold. Michael, exhausted and terrified, hadn't slept a wink. The sounds had stopped just before dawn, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. He cautiously approached the window, his rifle still clutched in his hand. The snow had stopped. He could see footprints leading up to the cabin, circling it, then disappearing back into the woods. And there, pinned to the door, was a piece of paper, a message scrawled in a rough hand. "See you next Christmas." The words sent a shiver down his spine. He was being watched, hunted. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. And next Christmas he wouldn't be alone. He would be ready. The snow fell softly. A pale Christmas light seeped in through the window. Emily huddled deeper into her worn armchair, a book clasped in her hands. The apartment was silent, save for the crackling of the old radiator. It was Christmas morning, but the day felt empty, echoing the loneliness that had settled into Emily's life. The aroma of pine needles from a forgotten Christmas tree filled the air, a bittersweet reminder of happier times. Emily sighed, her breath misting in the cold air. She longed for the warmth of family, for the sound of laughter. But those were just distant memories now. Emily closed her book, her gaze falling upon a single unmarked package lying beneath the sparsely decorated Christmas tree. It hadn't been there before. A shiver ran down her spine. Who could have left it? She lived alone, her only neighbor, an elderly woman who rarely left her apartment. Curiosity warred with trepidation. Slowly, Emily rose from the armchair and crossed the room, her footsteps muffled by the worn rug. The package was wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with twine. There was no card, no indication of who it was from. Hesitantly, Emily reached out and touched the package. It felt cold beneath her fingers, sending a fresh wave of unease through her. Taking a deep breath, she picked it up and carried it back to the armchair. With trembling fingers, she untied the twine and unwrapped the paper. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded velvet, lay a doll. It was old, crafted from dark, polished wood. Its limbs were jointed but stiff, as if they hadn't been moved in decades. But it was the doll's eyes that truly unsettled Emily. They were made of glass, a deep, unsettling blue that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. They were strangely lifelike, holding a depth that sent a chill down her spine. It felt as if the doll was watching her, its gaze unwavering and intense. Emily quickly averted her gaze, placing the doll on the coffee table. She tried to shake off the unsettling feeling that had washed over her. It was just an old doll, nothing more. And yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of a presence in the room. Days turned into nights. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in a serene silence. But inside Emily's apartment, a different kind of silence had taken hold, one that crackled with tension and unspoken fear. The doll remained on the coffee table, its blue glass eyes staring blankly ahead. One evening, as Emily sat reading, she heard a soft thump from the living room. Her heart leapt into her throat. She slowly put down her book, her gaze drawn to the doll. It had moved. It was now facing her, its body slightly turned as if it had been watching her. Terror gripped Emily's heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was somehow alive, that it was watching her, studying her. Desperate for answers, she turned to her elderly neighbor. The woman's face paled when Emily showed her the doll. "That doll," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "It belonged to a young girl who lived in this very apartment many years ago. They say she died in a tragic accident, and some say her spirit lives on in the doll." Emily's blood ran cold. The doll was more than just a toy. It was a vessel, a conduit to the other side. And it was watching her, its blue glass eyes reflecting a lifetime of sorrow and something far more sinister. Blackwood Manor was old, creaky. It stood like a sentinel of time, its walls whispering secrets of the past. Full of shadows even during the day, the kind of shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking. But tonight, Christmas Eve, it felt warm. The manor was transformed by twinkling lights and festive decorations. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow that danced on the walls. The scent of pine needles and cinnamon filled the air, mingling with the crisp, cold scent of snow. Lucy's family, gathered from far and wide, laughed and talked. Their voices filled the manor with joy and warmth. Presents piled high under the twinkling tree, each one wrapped with care and love. Lucy, a wisp of a girl with bright, curious eyes, bounced on the balls of her feet. Her excitement was palpable. She couldn't wait for bedtime. The anticipation of the night ahead made her heart race. Tonight, she had a plan that she had been dreaming about for weeks. Tonight, she would see Santa Claus. She was determined to catch a glimpse of the jolly man in red. Her parents had tucked her into bed, her stocking hanging limply at the foot. The room was filled with a soft, comforting glow. "Santa only comes to sleeping children," her mother had warned with a wink. Lucy nodded, her mind already racing with plans. Lucy closed her eyes, pretending to sleep, her heart pounding with anticipation. She was ready for the magic of Christmas Eve. The grandfather clock chimed 12 times. Lucy threw back the covers and tiptoed to the window. The snow outside shimmered under the silvery light of the full moon. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then she heard it, a soft scraping sound. From the roof, Santa had arrived. Excitement bubbled inside her as she crept towards the door, her bare feet silent on the cold wooden floor. She had to see him, just a peek. Pulling a stool from the hallway, Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. The house was eerily quiet, every creak and groan amplified in the silence. Lucy climbed onto her desk, her small hands trembling as she steadied herself. She had to know what was making that noise. The scraping sound grew louder, echoing through the empty rooms like a sinister whisper. She pushed the attic door open a crack, her heart pounding in her chest. A blast of icy wind hit her face, taking her breath away. It felt like the cold fingers of fear itself. Two glowing red eyes stared back at her from the darkness, unblinking and intense. Not the jolly eyes of Santa Claus, but something far more sinister. These were filled with something else, something cold and menacing, a malevolence that sent shivers down her spine. Lucy gasped, her fingers digging into the edge of the door, knuckles white with fear. The eyes blinked, then vanished, leaving her in the oppressive darkness. Silence descended again, heavy and absolute, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Lucy scrambled down, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, her mind racing with fear and confusion. Whatever was on the roof, it was not Santa Claus. It was something far more terrifying, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. Morning light bathed the snow-covered landscape in a soft, ethereal glow. The world seemed still, almost magical, as if time itself had paused to admire the beauty of the untouched snow. Lucy, pale and shaken, recounted her tale to her skeptical family. Her voice trembled as she described the eerie events of the previous night, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Her father, a practical man, chuckled and patted her head, dismissing her story as mere imagination. "Just the wind, darling, must have been quite a dream," he said, trying to reassure her with a comforting gesture. But as they gathered around the window to admire the pristine snow, a collective gasp filled the room. The serene beauty of the morning was shattered by an unsettling sight. Leading from the edge of the roof across the untouched snow were a trail of footprints. They were clear and unmistakable, cutting through the otherwise perfect blanket of white. But these were no ordinary footprints. They were unlike anything they had ever seen before. Deep, three-toed, and ending in what looked like sharp claws, the footprints seemed to belong to a creature from a nightmare. They led to the edge of the woods and disappeared into the shadows, leaving an air of mystery and fear. Lucy shivered, a chill running down her spine. The memory of the glowing red eyes haunted her thoughts. She never saw the creature again, but the fear lingered, a shadow over her heart. But every Christmas Eve, when the wind howled and snow swirled outside, she would remember the glowing red eyes and the chilling footprints in the snow. The memory was as vivid as the night it happened, and wonder what lurked in the shadows of Blackwood Manor. The mystery remained unsolved, a chilling tale whispered among the townsfolk.